Hi, I'm Laura Ingalls Gunn. Welcome to episode 3 of a 6-part series for a Little Women holiday. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing how I created this version of Joe's Scribbling Cap. It was a fast and fun project that I think even a beginning sewist could manage. We'll also be looking at these little tiny books that I created with scraps of paper and other embellishments. They're perfect for gift giving, slipping into a stocking, or as I've done here, to decorate the base of a tree. In this next segment, I'm going to be reading from Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, and we're going to discover a description about Joe's Scribbling Cap. In chapter 27, titled Literary Lessons, we get a very vivid description of what Jo wore when she went up to the attic to work on her writing. Every few weeks, she would shut herself up in her room, put on her scribbling suit, and fall into a vortex, as she expressed it, writing away at her novel with all her heart and soul. For till that was finished, she could find no peace. Her scribbling suit consisted of a black woolen pinafore, of which she could wipe her pen at will, and a cap of the same material adorned with a cheerful red bow, into which she bundled her hair when the decks were cleared for action. The cap was a beacon to the inquiring eyes of her family, who during these periods kept their distance, merely popping in their heads semi-occasionally to ask with interest, "Does genius burn, Jo?" They did not always venture even to ask this question, but took an observation of the cap and judged accordingly. If this expressive article of dress was drawn low on the forehead, it was a sign that hard work was going on. In exciting moments, it was pushed rakishly askew, and when despair seized the author, it was plucked wholly off and cast upon the floor. At such times, the intruder silently withdrew, and not until the red bow was seen gaily erect upon the gifted brow did anyone dare address Jo. I always have loved that vivid image of Jo up in her writer's attic, scribbling away in her festive cap. Now, I wanted to make my cap in blue as opposed to black as it is described. And this was a fairly quick project. Indeed, it actually took me longer to film and edit the video than it did to actually sew the cap. In the next segment, we will be in the workroom learning how the cap was created. This is the pattern that I created for Joe's Scribbling Cap, and the base of it is just a straight line which measures 13 inches across, and then about midway it measures 10.5 inches across right here. And then in terms of the height, we have a total height of 17.25 inches. And I wanted to talk about, when I am creating a pattern, what tools are helpful for me. This is called a French curve. This is tracing paper. It comes on a roll. You can get it in the artist supply section of your hobby and crafts stores, and of course paper scissors, a ruler, And then to cut it out, you'll want to use fabric scissors. And this is just a reminder, don't mix up your paper and your fabric scissors. Keep those separate. And then, of course, to pin the pattern on, I use a wide variety of pins. This is from the automotive hobby shop. It's magnetic, and so if it falls off the table, I don't have to pick up a million pins. It, as you can see, holds them in there pretty good. So why the French curve is amazing is it does exactly what it says. It creates those nice even curves. You know, if you need bigger curves, it's a little bit hard to see. I'll put it on the dark section here. So for the bottom section, you know, I just used a regular ruler, and then I just moved this down to create the slight curve of the cap that I wanted. Now I'm trying to figure out how to get this in PDF form so I can share it with you guys. So fingers crossed I will be able to figure that out at some point. Now, in terms of the fabric, the book mentions that it is a black wool, but I wanted to make a velvet cap, kind of like what you see Winona Ryder wearing as Jo's character in the 1994 film. And hers is sort of a burgundy cranberry colored velvet. My friend Tiffany had this scrap piece of cotton velvet, and so I just traded her for some gold cotton velvet that I had left over from when I made Harriet Spencer. And you know, that's just a good way to get what you need without spending any money. Swap with your friends. And now I'm gonna cut this section out. One important thing that I did not mention when I was creating this pattern is this straight bottom edge that measures 13 inches across. I had taken a tape measure and measured the circumference of my head and divided the number in half to get that measurement. So you may want to take a tape measure or a piece of string and put it around your head, around the forehead area where your cap will rest, to determine this, because human beings are wonderfully and individually made. So this might be a wee bit smaller or larger in size for you. And then you can still do the same slight degree to the top for your measurement. Okay, you can kind of see that I have cut a lining piece as well as the exterior pieces, and this is just a lightweight cotton quilting fabric. You can use whatever you want, whatever is in your stash. This was just my preference, and you can see on the velvet I have put right sides together and pinned all along the outer curved edge. I will not be sewing along the bottom because of course that's where my head is going to go, but I'm going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around, and then I'm going to repeat that for my 2 lining pieces all the way around, leaving the bottom open. Now, do you have to create a lining piece? That is optional because this is cotton velvet. It has a tendency to fray wildly along the edges. And so I just want a liner. I think it'll feel nicer on my head as well to have a smooth, soft interior lining. But again, you don't have to do that. That is just my preference. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch up these two pieces. Pony is on neighborhood watch. Okay, so I have sewed a 1/2 inch seam, and as usual I am pressing open my seams. Oh, Pony's brought in a little bit of snack. On the velvet, I do not press the outer fabric because that can mark it up. And then on the end, where it's going to be the tip of the hat, I just clipped the curves a little bit. And you can see I have already put the lining inside out, so that just makes it lay a little bit more smoothly. What's going on? What's going on? So once we have our seams all pressed out, kind of see, I turn the lining inside out so you can see there's the seam. And then my velvet, my exterior fabric, is right side out, and I slide it inside the lining. Okay? So you kind of see that doing it that way, it is right sides together. Okay, and you're going to line it up at the seams, and you're going to pin it all the way around, with the exception of an area that you can then flip it out when you're done. And how I remember this is you can see that there's a little red pin here and a little red pin here. So I'm actually going to start stitching at this pin, go all the way around, and I know to stop at this red pin here. So let's go ahead and sew that seam. I have sewn all around the edge, you can see right there, and then on this one section I left it for enough room just for my hand to squeeze through, and I'm going to grab the top end of the hat. That's what we're going to start pulling out, and you know, slow and steady wins this race. Okay. So that didn't work. Okay. So then you can see that when you do that, one side is velvet and the other side is the lining, okay? And then you have your cap end on either end, okay? So then, once we're at that point, we're going to push the lining inside, okay? And then it just takes a little finessing around the edges. Okay. Again, I'm going to use my iron to press that seam once I get it smoothed out. And then you can hand stitch this closed if you want, or use your machine if you're not concerned. That little section
where my hand went, I'm going to hand stitch it. So I'm going to finish kind of getting it all smoothed out. I'm going to hand stitch that closed. And I've got one more detail that I want to do. In the 1994 film version, Winona Ryder's Jo character, her scribbling cap, has an embroidered detail about 2 inches from the edge, and it's sort of like a scrolling vine. And so I'm going to go ahead and set up my machine. It does a few simple embroidery stitches. I have this really pretty variegated thread. It goes from navy to a royal. I think that'll be really pretty on this. So let me go ahead and set that up. And other than that, we just need to put a red ribbon at the top.
In Chapter 2, titled A Merry Christmas, the girls awake to find a small gift from Marmee that has been lovingly tucked under their pillows. Jo was the first to wake in the gray dawn of Christmas morning. No stockings hung at the fireplace, and for a moment she felt as much disappointed as she did long ago when her little sock fell down because it was so crammed with goodies. Then she remembered her mother's promise and, slipping her hand under her pillow, drew out a little crimson-colored book. She knew it very well, for it was that beautiful old story of the best life ever lived, and Jo felt that it was a true guidebook for any pilgrim going the long journey. She woke Meg with a Merry Christmas and bade her see what was under her pillow. A green-covered book appeared, and with the same picture inside, and a few words written by their mother, which made their one present very precious in their eyes. Presently, Beth and Amy woke to rummage and find their little books also, one dove-colored, the other blue, and all sat looking at and talking about them while the east grew rosy with the coming day. Based on that passage, I was inspired to create these 4 little books in the color palette that was described in Little Women. Amy's book is in blue, Beth's is in dove, Jo has red, and of course Meg has green. I have set up a little crafting station in the kitchen, so let's head there next to see how they are made. I love creating crafts that, while they don't cost a lot, are truly heartfelt, and I think these sweet little books fit that bill perfectly. So let me show you how to make them. This is actually a great project to do with your kids, and you just need one of these little tiny notebooks, and you can get these. They come 3 in a pack, at the dollar store, and they come in a wide variety of colors like blue, green, black, and red. And then what you're going to need to do is gather up your scraps of scrapbooking paper and fit it to size of the front. Okay, and you can kind of see that the sides are angled a little bit, they're curved, so you'll want to repeat that on your paper. And then we're also going to put like a decorative book spine, again with a piece of scrap paper that you can use any type of color palette or theme. That is the beauty in creating these books. You can really personalize them exactly how you want to. And then just for some visual interest, another piece of colored scrapbook paper, and to achieve a circle you can use a paper punch, you can use your Cry-Cut or silhouette machine, or trace a drinking glass and cut it out by hand. So the first step that we are going to do is we are going to apply these 3 pieces of paper with craft glue. And just to kind of go over the whole procedure in its entirety, once that is dry, we'll then attach this image. Now this is a sweet little image that I have of 4 girls that really encompassed the March sisters, and I've taken a little bit of glitter glue and just did some accents on their collars and around the flowers. And once all of this is glued in place, we're going to use pop dots. And what these do is you apply them to the back, and they're just a little bit raised, sticky bits of adhesive that when you then apply it, it creates an elevated element that really helps create a 3D dimension in the books. And so you can kind of see, I'll come in for a closer look at the books in a few minutes, but it just adds a little bit of interest. And then I wanted a type of bookmark that you can see I've added to each of the books. And again, that is just a piece of scrap ribbon. These little tiny rhinestone buckles I got at our fabric district here in Dallas, but I've also seen them at other craft stores, often in the button or jewelry section. So check a wide variety of things. It's not necessary, it's an optional accent, but it adds a little bit of nice sparkle. And of course you'll need some scissors and some craft glue. For the next section, I do use a hot glue gun, and if you are doing this project with your kids, you will want to use the hot glue gun, of course, to keep them safe. And other little embellishments that I used are little pieces of Dresden trim. I had purchased these on Etsy for another project that I did last year, but I always keep my pretty little scraps. And again, these are just like little paper punches, and then I've gone and added a little bit of glitter sparkle on each blossom of the flower. It just overall gives a really pretty sparkly look. And of course, the holiday season is all about sparkle and glitter. So let's go ahead and just jump right in. So for these first 3 pieces, again, I'm going to be applying a piece of paper, and that's just to hide the book, you know, it's still going to be functional. And I like to be fairly exact with my glue. You can kind of see here that I'm applying the glue. You don't need a lot. So by using a paintbrush, and this is just one of my old paintbrushes that the bristles were no longer good for painting pictures, but it's certainly good to use for gluing. And you just want to make sure you get it all along the edges on the back, like that, and a little bit in the middle. And so then once you have that all glued, you're then, I'm going to lift this up so you can kind of see it. You're just going to make sure the edges match up to the bottom of the book and kind of press it out. Now, because this is the magic of video, I've already covered the backs of the book and then also each of the interior pages at the front and the back. So you're just repeating these processes. And again, you don't have to do the interior pages or the back. It just kind of makes it that much more charming. All right, so we have that first piece in place. And then the next thing I do is this little pseudo book spine. And again, I'm just taking my paintbrush and really getting all the edges with a dab of craft glue. You don't need a lot. Okay, so then that's all coated with glue, this back. And then I'm gonna line it up right along where the spine of the book is. And let me turn it around so you can kind of see what I'm doing. And I kind of eyeball it to make sure it's level, and you can kind of feel when it's level. And again, I'm just pressing down to get it into position. Okay, and it's a little bit off down here on the bottom. That's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect, because by the time you add all the embellishments, you're not even going to notice that. So if you happen to cut it a little short, don't panic. Just means you're going to have to add more fun stuff. So then I have my circular piece, and it doesn't have to be a circle shape. You know, if you prefer squares or ovals, you can absolutely do that. We're just creating interest with some additional papers. Okay, so for this, I'm just going to center it, and it's gonna overlap the spine, the paper spine that we just put into place. So it kind of looks like this. Okay. And that's all we're going to need for right now. Now, my next step is that I'm going to wrap it in a piece of paper or tissue and place it under a heavy book to dry like that. But before I do that, I also want to attach the bookmark ribbon. So right here, and again, it's the same principle. You're just taking your craft glue. And why do I like craft glue for this portion of the project? Because it dries smooth and flat. You know, sometimes with hot glue guns, you get a clump, and I don't want that. I want a nice smooth book. So I just kind of measure. Okay, I want the ribbon on the front to go all the way to the bottom. Plus I do a little excess because I'm gonna do a dovetail cut. Oh, there's our Grace. And then we're just gonna layer it to that section of glue that we've just put in, okay? So this is the interior of the book, and I'm lining it up right next to the papers. I want to make sure that it's functional, and I'm smoothing it down. Let me put it up here. Smoothing it down, and then this is left loose because, again, this is what will make it a bookmark. You'll be able to flip it into the page where you have left a note, but it needs a little bit of weight. So you can use the buckle like I showed you. You can add a little button or a pin. So in this case, I'm just adding this little buckle, but I'm not going to do it right now because, again, we're going to now wrap it up and we're going to put it underneath a heavy book. I usually will have it sitting under the book for about an hour. That's how long it takes the glue to dry. So, but in the magic that is video, of course, I have another book that is ready to go. I've already covered this front section, and you can see that it's a totally different design because I'm using scraps of paper. It looks very different. Now, on this one, I decided that I'm going to just hot glue in the ribbon. So I just add a thin bead of it. This is quicker, but you know, both ways are okay. I just have to really make sure that I smooth that hot glue out. And again, you know, it's kind of popping up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed that ribbon. And it might just be because my ribbon is a little bit of a thicker ribbon. I think maybe if it was a different type of ribbon, then it wouldn't stick up. But with the addition of a little ribbon, a buckle, or a button, you know, it lays down really nice. And I'll trim that in a little bit with my sewing scissors. You know, you don't want to mix up your craft scissors with your sewing scissors. Now on this book, when I was putting the spine in, I had cut it a little short, so I want to camouflage that I made a little mistake. So I'm going to take this little bit of Dresden trim. Again, I'm going to come back in. My paintbrush keeps sliding down into my glue. Normally I'm doing this so quickly because I'm not talking into a camera, so it doesn't have the opportunity to do that. But again, just gonna dab just a little bit on this Dresden trim. And you can use ribbon trim, you can use stickers, anything that you want, anything that you have scraps of. And so then, just gonna do it right across the top. Just like that, and then kind of come back in. And this side needs a little bit more glue. Let's turn it around so you can kind of see. And then I always keep an extra cloth nearby because your hands, when dealing with this, do sometimes get glue on them. Okay. Now, if a little bit is hanging off, that's fine. Let it go for right now. Once it's dry, we'll go back in and trim off any tails, and we'll just kind of make sure you kind of eyeball that it's straight. Looks great. And it might be fun just to add a little pizzazz down here too. So same type of principle. Now this time you saw that I added the glue directly to the book. There's more than one way usually to do a craft. It's whatever you prefer. Okay, so now I'm just adjusting again, putting it into position, smoothing things out. One needs a little bit more glue on the corner. And I can dab at it with this cloth too to get the extra glue off. Okay. So at this point we had one big piece of paper, and then there was a smaller blue rectangle, and then I did another image, and then I did a book spine, and then a little bit of trim up here. And I want to make it kind of 3D. So I'm going to take these little pop dots, and again, you can get these at most craft stores in the craft book section. And they're just these little squares, if you can see that. And then you peel off the backs, and they're adhesive. Let me kind of look, where do I want some interest? I think maybe right in the center of this book. Kind of brings out the green, just like that. And again, make any shape that you want. You know, that's the beauty of this. There's no wrong or right way. It's total creative license. And then I'm going to put another one down at the bottom. I like symmetry. So now we have, I think that looks really pretty right there. And see, it didn't take that long. Now with the cutting out of the papers and then applying the pieces with glue and allowing them to dry, it takes about an hour to create the book. What I do though is I do assembly line fashion. So however many books I need, I just line them up, and then I just keep going until they're all finished. And these little books are going to be for my guests who come to the merrymaking party that I'm hosting next week. And it is a group of my friends, and they're all going to come in 1860s attire, and we're going to decorate the tree and have a happy Christmas tea. I love to have people over during the holidays because I've cleaned my house. It looks great with all the decorations. It's the perfect time to entertain. And because my guests are making a little bit of an extra effort with their hair and fashions, I just wanted a little something that they could go home with. So this will be a little party favor. And I'm going to be doing some other crafts that they're also going to be taking home with them. But I hope if you do a similar project, you'll let me know. You can always contact me on Instagram, and I would love to share whatever you make in my stories. So I hope you enjoyed the craft.
Okay, I gotta put you down. I gotta turn on the machine. Okay, I know you want to sew. Okay, I love you. Bye-bye.